Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Poor army vet inherits a useless dragon. Then it spoke like his fallen comrade. Carter Vance never asked for this. Retirement was supposed to be quiet, a well-earned escape from years of bloodshed, orders barked across battlefields and nights spent listening to the hum of warships instead of the wind. He had traded his old life for a simple one, settling on Lazareth IV, a backwater planet barely worth mentioning in the galactic charts. It was a sanctuary for the forgotten, for those who had given too much and asked for nothing in return. Carter had been content here. He owned a modest homestead built into the cliffs overlooking an endless stretch of sapphire-colored seas. His days were spent repairing old equipment, tending to his small vegetable farm, and maybe, just maybe, learning how to sleep through the night without one hand on a weapon. Then the message came, a royal summons, not from Earth's military, not from some old war buddy, but from the Los, king of the Zenari Dominion. Carter had met a lot of alien royalty in his time, most of them self-important, power-hungry egomaniacs wrapped in silk and gold, using soldiers like pawns in a never-ending chess match for territory and control. Bos had been one of the worst, the kind of thing who smiled while signing death warrants, who commanded legions of warriors but never risked a battlefield himself. Why the hell was the Los contacting him now? The hologram flickered to life in Carter's workshop, casting the regal form of the Zenui king across the dimly lit room. His emerald-scaled face looked the same, his golden eyes filled with amusement and something else Carter didn't like. Carter Vance. Rose Per. It has been many years. Carter crossed his arms. Not long enough, the king chuckled. I expected nothing less, but I have not called to discuss the past. I have a gift for you. Carter narrowed his eyes. I don't want anything from you. Ah, but this is already yours. The screen flickered and the image changed. Carter's breath caught. In the center of a massive containment cell, curled up like a shadow ready to strike, was a dragon, not just any dragon, an alien beast, enormous and terrifying. Its scales, black as the void, shimmered with an eerie blue glow that pulsed like the stars. Massive wings lay folded at its sides, and strange markings ran along its body like ancient runes. Golden reptilian eyes stared at the camera, not with mindless rage but with something far worse, awareness. Carter's pulse quickened. This is Sorth, Thuras continued. He is yours now. Carter scowled. Why? The king leaned forward, smiling. Because no one else will have him. The transmission cut out before Carter could demand an explanation. Outside, a deep, earth-shaking rumble filled the sky. Carter stepped out onto his landing pad just in time to see a massive transport ship descending, its hull branded with the royal crest of the Zenui Dominion. Inside that ship was his so-called inheritance, and Carter had the distinct, sinking feeling that his peaceful retirement was officially over. Carter had seen a lot of terrifying things in his lifetime. He had watched warships burn up in planetary atmospheres, had stared down mercenaries with nothing left to lose, had fought beasts genetically engineered to rip apart an entire squad in seconds. But standing in front of a creature straight out of a nightmare, knowing it was his responsibility now, was an entirely new kind of terror. The containment cell doors hissed open. Carter had expected roaring, thrashing, fire-breathing rage, some kind of hellish fury that would confirm the rumors surrounding the creature. Instead, Sorth stepped out slowly, controlled and deliberate. The dragon's movements were impossibly smooth, its massive claws clicking against the metal floor, its tail coiling slightly behind it. It was watching Carter, studying him the way a predator measures whether its prey is worth chasing. Carter's instincts screamed at him to back away, but he ignored them. You don't look happy to be here, Carter muttered. Sortha's golden eyes gleamed, and then, in a voice richer and deeper than any Carter had ever heard, the dragon spoke, neither do you. Carter froze, every rational thought in his brain short-circuited. It had been years since something genuinely shocked him, since he had felt his heart skip a beat in pure, dumbstruck disbelief. Dragons didn't talk, not like this, not perfectly, not in human words, not with sharp wit and amusement woven into every syllable. "You can talk," Carter finally managed. "Voice, hoarse." Sorth tilted his head slightly, those piercing golden eyes filled with something dangerously close to amusement. "You can state the obvious. Good, we are making progress." Carter rubbed his temples. "I need a drink." Sorth chuckled, the sound rolling like thunder. "So do I." Carter just stared at him. "All right," he exhaled, "start talking, dragon. What the hell is going on?" Sortha's wings shifted slightly, his massive form lowering into a resting position as if deciding to humor Carter. "I was bred as a weapon, created to destroy, trained to obey, didn't take, huh?" Carter guessed. The dragon's tail flicked. "No, I refused to be controlled, so they labeled me broken, dangerous, despised, and then they sent me here." Carter crossed his arms. "Why me?" Sortha's gaze sharpened. "I do not know, but if I were to guess, perhaps they wanted me to rot in silence, and perhaps they wanted you to be the one forced to watch." Carter didn't like that answer. He didn't like that he was being used in some twisted game. He didn't like the way Sorth said it with calm certainty, as though he had accepted his fate a long time ago. Carter sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "All right, well, congratulations, you're stuck with me now." Sortha's lips curled slightly, revealing the barest hint of razor-sharp fangs, "And you with me." The war veteran and the alien dragon stared at each other, a silent understanding settling between them. Neither had chosen this, but neither was backing down either. Carter sighed again, shaking his head. "You hungry?" Sortha's eyes gleamed with a famished glint. Carter muttered, turning toward the homestead, "Let's get you fed before I regret my life choices." Behind him, the dragon laughed softly, and just like that, the war veteran and the dragon began their first night as unlikely companions. For the first few days, Carter Vance and Sorth existed in a state of tense coexistence, both silently daring each other as though waiting for a misstep that would ignite an inevitable explosion. Sorth was, of course, what Carter expected. The dragon was far more intelligent and annoyingly sarcastic than any alien creature he'd encountered, despite being twice the size of a hover tank with claws that could tear through steel. Sorth carried himself with the air of a bored aristocrat, as though life itself were beneath him. Carter, on the other hand, had zero tolerance for royal nonsense. "Do you ever stop talking?" Carter muttered as he adjusted the solar shield over his small vegetable garden. He noticed that Sorth had been following him around all day, his massive black wings folded neatly at his sides, his golden eyes gleaming with mischief. "Would you prefer I remain silent while you grunt and curse at broken equipment all day?" Sorth retorted, his voice smooth but cutting. Carter sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah, well, you could try being helpful instead of judging my entire existence." Sorth tilted his head. "Help you? Wish me to dig in the dirt like some common beast?" "Wouldn't hurt." Carter muttered, bending down to adjust the irrigation line, "Might give you something to do besides annoy me." The dragon chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated the ground beneath Carter's boots. "You amuse me, human, few would speak to a dragon with such irreverence." "Yeah, well, few dragons talk, they're auditioning for a political debate," Carter shot back. Sortha's tail flicked, knocking over one of the nearby empty water barrels with a loud clang. Carter flinched instinctively, reaching for the sidearm he no longer carried. Old habits died hard. Sorth noticed the movement, his gaze softening slightly. "You are still haunted by the war." Carter didn't answer, turning his attention back to the irrigation system. Sorth didn't press the issue. Instead, he lowered himself onto the ground, his massive form coiling like a resting predator, and watched in silence as Carter worked for a while. Neither of them spoke, but something shifted between them that day, a fragile understanding forged in shared pain. Neither of them was ready to talk about it. Later that night, as the twin moons of Lazareth IV bathed the cliffs in silver light, Carter sat by the fire pit outside his homestead, a bottle of cheap synth whiskey in hand. Sorth lay nearby, his bioluminescent stripes glowing faintly and casting shadows that danced across the rocky terrain. "Ever been to war?" Carter asked suddenly. The dragon's eyes opened, gleaming like molten gold. "I was created for it." "Yeah, what happened?" Sorth sighed, a low, rumbling sound echoing through the night. "I refused to be what they wanted me to be, and for that, I was cast aside, forgotten, until they decided I was worth more as a punishment than as a soldier." Carter nodded slowly, taking a sip of his whiskey. "Yeah, people like that never change." "No," Sorth agreed quietly. "They do not." The fire crackled between them, and for the first time, Carter felt like he wasn't completely alone in the galaxy. The peace didn't last, it never did. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a low-orbit surveillance drone, its metallic shell glinting under the morning sun as it hovered over the cliffs near Carter's homestead. Carter spotted it while tending to the solar panels, his gut twisting with unease. He hadn't seen Xentar in years, but he recognized the royal insignia etched into the drone's chassis. "Hey, sorry," he called, shielding his eyes from the glare, "you might want to see this." The dragon emerged from the cave he'd claimed as his temporary lair, his wings rustling like silk as he moved. His eyes narrowed as he spotted Ed, the drone, and a low growl rumbled deep in his chest. "They're watching us." "No kidding," Carter muttered. He grabbed a pulse rifle from the weapons rack near the entrance of his workshop and took aim before he could fire. Sorth raised a claw. "Wait." Carter hesitated. "Why?" "It's probably sending intel back to their fleet right now." "Exactly," Sorth said. "Let it. Let them think we are weak and unprepared." Carter lowered the rifle, though his instincts screamed at him to destroy the drone. "You've got a plan, don't you?" The dragon's lips curled into a dangerous grin. "I always do." 2 days later, the Xenui warship arrived. Carter watched from the cliffs as the massive vessel descended through the atmosphere, its engines roaring like a storm, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The ship was a Zenari Hunter-class frigate built for one purpose: extraction missions. "Looks like they brought the cavalry," Carter muttered. Sorth stood beside him, his scales shimmering like black obsidian, his gaze unflinching. "They are fools if they think they can take me." "Yeah, well, let's not get cocky," Carter said, adjusting the straps on his tactical vest. "You ready for this?" The dragon's eyes burned with cold fire. Always the warship's landing ramp lowered, and a squad of heavily armed Zenari soldiers marched out, their armor gleaming under the twin suns. At their head was a familiar figure. General Kael Zeros, one of Thalas's most loyal enforcers. Carter clenched his jaw, he'd crossed paths with Zeros during the war. The man was a ruthless tactician known for leaving no survivors. "Carter Vance," Zeros's voice called, amplified through a combat visor. "By order of King Foss, you are to relinquish the creature known as Sorth and surrender yourself into Zenari custody." Carter stepped forward, pulse rifle in hand. "Yeah, that's not happening." Zeros tilted his head. "You would defy the king. Wouldn't be the first time." Carter said, raising the rifle. Zeros sighed. "Very well," he gestured to his soldiers, "kill them both." The first blaster shot exploded against the rocks, and all hell broke loose. Sorth roared, a sound that shook the cliffs and sent a wave of fear through the Xenui soldiers. He launched himself into the air, wings unfurling with a deafening snap, and descended upon the squad like a living storm. His claws tore through armor as though it were paper. Carter took cover behind a boulder, returning fire with precise bursts that took out 2 soldiers before they could flank him. The battle was chaos, blaster fire and dragon fire colliding in a violent symphony. By the time the dust settled, the Xenui squad lay in ruins, their warship smoking and crippled. Carter lowered his rifle, breathing hard. Well, that one was better than expected. Sorth landed beside him, his scales drenched in blue blood, his chest heaving. "I warned them." Carter nodded. "Yeah, you did." As they stood amidst the wreckage, Carter realized something: this wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was war, and he wasn't facing it alone. The aftermath of battle was always the same: the acrid scent of scorched metal, the hum of cooling weapon barrels, and the silence of the dead. Carter stood amidst the wreckage of the Xenui warship, his pulse still hammering in his chest. The once pristine armor of the soldiers lay cracked and splintered, bodies motionless beneath the twin suns of Lazareth 4. Smoke curled from the ruins of the landing craft, its engine sparking in protest as it gave up the last of its power. Sorth stood beside him, his massive black-scaled body coiled in tension, his bioluminescent stripes pulsing faintly, a quiet, eerie heartbeat against the silence. His golden eyes scanned the wreckage, tail flicking in irritation. "They'll come back," Carter muttered, rubbing his aching shoulder. This was just the first wave. Sorth exhaled, sending wisps of hot air curling into the sky. "Of course, the Zenari do not tolerate disobedience." Carter snorted. "Yeah, I know a thing or two about that." He kicked a fallen rifle aside, already making a mental inventory of salvageable gear. He didn't have much: a half-arsenal, a bunker with bare-bones security, and a dragon whose strength, while immense, wasn't limitless. They weren't prepared for another fight. Sorth must have sensed his unease because he turned his piercing gaze toward Carter. "You regret taking me in?" Carter paused, wiping sweat and dust from his brow. "No, I regret that I'm dealing with the Zenari again." "But no regrets." Sorth huffed, his tail flicking again, this time with something softer, more thoughtful. They had no time to waste. Carter crouched beside the wreckage of the warship's command console, tearing through exposed wires and shattered screens. "If we're lucky, the distress signal didn't go through before we took him out." Sorth lowered his head, peering at the ruined technology. "Luck has never been a friend of mine," Carter gave a dry chuckle. "Yeah, well, same." He pulled the power core from the console, disconnecting the emergency beacon. No more signals would leave this wreckage, but it wouldn't matter. Zeros would send more. "All right, here's the plan," Carter said, standing. "We fortify. We don't wait for them to bring the fight to us. We take the fight to them." Sortha's gaze sharpened. "You have spent years in solitude, Carter Vance. Now suddenly, you wish for war." Carter sighed. "I don't want war, Dragon, but we don't have a choice. I'm not letting them take you." For a moment, Sorth stared at him, unreadable, then slowly his lips curled back, revealing the glint of razor-sharp fangs. "Good." Over the next 48 hours, Carter and Sorth worked feverishly to turn Carter's quiet homestead into a fortress. He knew how the Zenari operated: they wouldn't send another small retrieval squad, they would escalate. The next wave would be a proper strike force, with heavy weapons, combat mechs, and aerial support. If they wanted Sorth back, they would burn this planet to the ground. To get him, so Carter prepared, he dug out his old military-grade landmines, setting them along the narrow cliffside paths leading up to his compound. He reactivated the automated turret drones, which had been collecting dust in the storage bunker, and rewired the shield generators, originally meant to protect against dust storms, but now modified to fry anything that tried to breach the perimeter. Meanwhile, Sorth scouted the skies, keeping watch for any incoming drop ships. He hunted in the deep ravines, bringing back supplies of fresh game, and spent hours training his body, honing his reflexes, his firepower, and most importantly, his restraint. "Ever go full force?" Carter asked one evening as they sat around the fire, eating the alien equivalent of grilled AK. Sortha's golden eyes glowed softly in the firelight. Once, Carter raised a brow, and the dragon exhaled slowly, the embers in the fire pit flickering as his breath passed over them. There was nothing left. Carter swallowed a piece of meat. They sat in companionable silence, listening to the wind howling through the cliffs. Then Sorth spoke again. "You were a soldier." Carter nodded. "Yeah, you lost people." Carter's jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. Sorth didn't push, he simply waited. Finally. Carter sighed. Yeah, I lost good men, bad ones too. Sometimes I wonder if there's even a difference in the end. Sorth considered that, his tail curling around his massive form. There is. Carter exhaled, guess we'll see if we end up on the right side of history when this is over. The dragon let out a low, amused rumble. History does not decide right or wrong, only the victors do. Carter smirked. Then let's make damn sure we win. Sorth bared his razor-sharp teeth in agreement, and for the first time, Carter felt something he hadn't in years, purpose. The attack came at dawn. Carter had barely closed his eyes before the ground trembled beneath him, followed by the distant shriek of atmospheric thrusters. He bolted upright, grabbing his rifle. Sorth, the dragon, was already awake, his wings flaring as he sprinted toward the cliffs, his keen eyesight scanning the skies. For ships, heavy transports carrying war mech, Carter swore under his breath. Time to roll out the welcome mat. The first Centauri drop ship descended, its landing thrusters kicking up dust and rock before its ramp could even hit the ground. Carter triggered the perimeter mines. A massive explosion tore through the first wave of soldiers, sending armor and limbs flying. The turret drones activated next, raining down rapid-fire plasma rounds, forcing the second squad to take cover. Then the warmech emerged, 3 towering bipedal machines, each one armed with twin plasma cannons and heavy shielding. They stomped forward, their targeting scanners locking onto the homestead. Son of a, Carter ducked as the first cannon blast obliterated his water tower, sending metal shrapnel flying. Sorth snarled, his wings flaring. I will handle the mechs. Carter, Denard, you go break something. The black dragon launched into the air, a blur of shadow and fire, moving faster than the targeting systems could track. The first mech swiveled its pilot, barely reacting before Sorth crashed into it, his claws tore through its cockpit, sparks flying as the machine toppled over, its pilot screaming as fire consumed the wreckage. The second mech fired, but Sorth rolled midair, dodging the blast, then countered with a roaring inferno of white-hot flames. Carter grinned. Now we're talking. He raised his rifle, taking out a Zenui sniper on the ridge, then sprinted to reposition before the next wave arrived. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Carter and Sorth weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. The battle had raged for over an hour, turning Carter's quiet homestead into a war zone. Smoke curled into the early morning sky, plasma fire still crackled against the smoldering wreckage of downed Zenari transports. The once pristine cliffs of Lazareth IV were now littered with bodies, shattered warmech, and burning metal husks. Carter ducked behind an overturned supply crate, gripping his rifle tight as another blast from a Zenari warch incinerated a chunk of rock where he had just been standing. His heart pounded in his chest, his muscles screaming from exhaustion, but he forced himself to move to survive. From above, Sorth tore through the sky, his massive black wings casting shadows over the battlefield, his glowing stripes pulsing with energy. He let out a thunderous roar, twisting midair to evade a barrage of missile fire, then dove straight for the nearest mech. Talons extended, the Zenari pilot didn't even have time to scream before Sorth sank his claws into the cockpit, tearing through reinforced plating like it was paper. The mech toppled over, crashing into the rocky terrain with a deafening boom. Carter gritted his teeth. That's one more down, he thought, but they aren't out of the fire yet. The Zenari had regrouped their remaining forces, assembling in a tight formation at the base of the cliffs. Their commander, a heavily armored Zenari officer with a cybernetic eye, raised a fist. Deploy the arc cannons, he barked. Carter's stomach dropped. He knew those weapons, Zenari arc cannons, weren't just high-powered plasma launchers, they fired electromagnetic pulses strong enough to fry electronics, which meant they would disable Carter's perimeter defenses and drop Sorth out of the sky in a heartbeat. They had adapted to the fight. Carter whipped around, searching for a solution. Sorth, they've got arc cannons. If they get a clean shot, you're going to fall. The dragon's eyes narrowed mid-flight. Then we ensure they never fire without waiting for your response. Sorth folded his wings and plummeted. The Zenari soldiers barely had time to react before the massive black dragon crashed into their formation like a meteor, sending bodies flying. Dust and fire exploded outward, and suddenly chaos erupted within their ranks. Carter didn't hesitate. He leaped from cover, moving fast, weaving through enemy fire. He wasn't as young or fast as he used to be, but he was still a soldier, and a soldier knew when to press an advantage. He ducked low, took aim, and fired a well-placed shot straight into the arc cannon's energy core. Boom! The weapon detonated in a wave of white-hot energy, taking out 3 Zenari soldiers with it. Sorth launched himself from the wreckage, flames roaring from his throat, catching the remaining forces in a wall of searing heat. By the time the smoke cleared, nothing remained but scorched ground, twisted armor, and silence. Carter wiped sweat from his brow, exhaling slowly. Well, that was a pain in the ass. Sorth huffed, folding his wings. They will return. Carter nodded grimly. Yeah, but next time we'll be waiting for them, and this time, they will be ready for us. For 2 days, Carter and Sorth worked on fortifying their defenses. They scavenged what they could from the destroyed warmech, reinforcing Carter's homestead with Zenari-grade plating and salvaged weapons. Carter barely slept, his body ached from constant movement, but he refused to slow down. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. But no matter how much Carter prepared, something gnawed at the back of his mind. Zeros had sent 2 squads after Sorth. That meant the Imperium knew he was alive, and that meant they wouldn't stop coming. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a distant energy signature on Carter's long-range scanners. Carter frowned as he adjusted the controls, scanning the readings. That's not Zenari tech, he muttered, tapping the screen. Sorth peered over his shoulder, his massive frame looming behind Carter. Then what is it? Carter narrowed his eyes. That's a mercenary ship, a big one. The screen blinked red, confirming an incoming vessel. Sorth ground, bounty hunters. Carter ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. Great, just what we needed, outsiders looking to make a quick credit. Sorth's golden eyes glowed faintly, the intensity in his gaze sharper than before. They will not take me. Carter added, yeah, well, let's make sure of that. They moved quickly, activating defensive protocols, rerouting power to the perimeter turrets, and ensuring the homestead's shields were at full capacity. Carter had dealt with bounty hunters before, but something about this felt different. The ship descended into the atmosphere, its dark, sleek form bristling with weaponry. Unlike the Zenari forces, this wasn't a military vessel, it was a predator built for one thing, the hunt. As it touched down on a nearby ridge, the comms unit in Carter's workshop crackled to life. A voice, smooth and laced with amusement, filled the room. Well, Carter Vance, you sure know how to make enemies. Carter's jaw tightened, he recognized that voice. Talon VX, a notorious bounty hunter known across the galaxy for never failing to collect his targets, had arrived. Sorth's wings twitched, his muscles coiling. He is dangerous. Carter exhaled slowly. Yeah, the worst kind. The holographic projection of Talon flickered to life, a tall, armored figure with his face obscured by a helmet marked with kill tally engravings. King thus put a hell of a price on your dragon, Talon mused. Enough to make me take a little detour out here to this dust ball of a planet? Carter crossed his arms. Not interested in negotiating, huh? Talon's helmet tilted slightly. You already know the answer to that. Sorth stepped forward, his golden gaze burning. If you want me, Hunter, come and take me. Talon chuckled. Oh, don't worry, I intend to. The comms cut out. Outside, the bounty hunter forces began their descent, drop ships landing with a heavy metallic thud, their engines hissing as armored mercenaries deployed in tight formation. Carter's grip tightened on his rifle. Well, looks like we've got another problem.